Gracious God, I pray that the words of my mouth and the thoughts and the meditations of all of our hearts are acceptable to you, our strength, our Redeemer. Amen. Once upon a time in a land far, far away, there was a fuss going on in the church. There was jealousy and there was quarreling. There was gossip and backbiting and bragging in the church. I know, hard to believe, isn't it? Some had been members longer than others, and they held that over the newcomers. There were fractions and frictions, but it was a long, long time ago. It was in Corinth, in Greece. Some people were bragging because they were founding members. They joined when the Apostle Paul started the church. And some were bragging because they came in the golden years when Pastor Apollos was building up the church. Some loved and were loyal to Paul, and some loved and were loyal to Apollos. And those who loved Paul thought that his way was the way, and those who loved Apollos thought that his way was the way. So there was fussing in the church. I did a little bit of research, meaning I asked Sherry, who had been here the longest? Addie Lancaster's name came up. She's been here since Dr. Court was the authority here. Some of you came during Clarence Forsberg. For others, it was Ben Garrison. For others, it was Rex Bevins. Some of you, David was pastor here as long. But for those that have joined in the last 7 years, I'm the only one that's been here. By the way, my girls grew up watching Sesame Street, and they learned to sing a song. One of these things is not like the other. There's an image just like that at a church in Omaha as well. Thank you for breaking the stained glass ceiling in 2018. I know you would have done so earlier had you been given an opportunity. Yeah. So Paul writes this letter to those quarreling folks at Corinth, and his letter is something like Apollos or Paul, Forsberg or Garrison, Rex or David or Jane. They were just servants through whom you came to belong as the Lord assigned to each. Some planted, some watered, some weeded. I think some probably spread manure all over the place. I'll let you assign to each which one. But Paul says, but remember, it was God who gave the growth. Last week, I finished packing out my office, and when the shelves were bare, it was hard. This thing I'm about to do became more real. I left my desk until last. I opened the drawer, the go-to drawer. You know, you have that junk drawer at home, don't you? There were name tags and pens and tape and paper clips assorted and thrown around, and I returned them to the workroom where they belonged. There were safety pins and a needle and thread. I packed that. There was a bottle of Tylenol and Tums with one remaining lonely remnant. I swallowed them for good measure. There was some pantyhose I haven't worn in years. I threw them out. There was hairspray and lip gloss and fingernail polish. The emergency items in all pastors' right-hand drawers. Right, Chad? There were lots of cough drops, and there were a few red-hot candies that had somehow escaped from my clutches. I threw some of them away. There was a drawer full of funeral bulletins, not just from the last 7 years, but from the last 26 years. And I saw the faces of those whose lives I had celebrated. And there were wedding licenses. I always keep a copy just in case, indicating the promise of love and new lives starting together. The archaeological dig through the drawers also found pictures. Here I am, perhaps, at my first appointment, my first Easter, a long time ago. My hair was a different color then. I think that was Clairol 5 or something like that. I found pictures of my youth groups and confirmation classes, and I did the math and realized those middle schoolers are in their 40s now. Oh, my. So many silent night Christmases. I found cards for my ordination so many years ago, and sympathy cards from you just 4 years ago. While serving my first church, there were pictures of the new sanctuary that we were building. It was a big leap of faith, my little rural congregation out in a cornfield outside of San Antonio. So we watched eagerly every day of construction. It was still dark when the line of cement trucks arrived to pour the foundation. Not much shows in those first pictures, except perhaps a few headlights and a dark morning sky with just a hint of the red dawn on the horizon. As truck after truck rolled in and emptied its contents, they started at the narthex and poured the concrete there, and then they moved to the center, the main floor, where the pews would sit. And then we were watching the sunrise and waiting for the next line of trucks to come to finish the chancel area when I had an idea. I was standing next to the contractor at the time, and I said, "Don't do anything." And I ran across the field, and I ran to my office, and there was a wall of crosses. And I selected one, and I ran back, and I stepped over the rebars and the 2x4s, and I placed a cross in the place where I figured the table would someday sit. Slowly, the oozing concrete covered over that shiny silver cross. And when I left my assignment there a few years later, I wrote a letter to the incoming pastor, letting him know that the foundation of that church was solid and would hold firm. Now, I was not here when the foundation of this church was poured in 1900. Might look like it some days, but nope. I have been beneath this communion table and these pews. I don't know if a silver cross is hiding anywhere down there, but I did spend an evening down there, an annual conference of 2008. It was my first annual conference in Nebraska, and there was a tornado. We spent hours on the lovely peach-stained carpet in the parlor, and the foundation in this building kept us safe and stood strong. There's archives down the hall, thanks to Annette and Don and their predecessors, files containing the history of this congregation's 150 years' work for justice and God's kingdom. And there are the records of the clergy that have served here. Pastors who came and gave what they could and passed the privilege on to the next, each choosing what to build upon. Dr. Frank Court was here in the 1950s. I didn't find his sermon, so I don't know if he ever used the phrase that was a new catchphrase to the culture at the time. But "take me to your leader" became popular as the U.S. was embroiled in a space race with the Soviet Union to see who would have dominance. This one was from 1953. The little Martians are talking to a horse or a jackass. And this one, it says, "Kindly take me to your president," but we don't need to go there today. It's been my privilege to be your leader for these last 7 years, and your outpouring of love these last few months has been overwhelming and a bit surprising. Your kind words speak to my heart. I think the Apostle Paul was very wise in writing what he did to the Corinthians. In case any of us pastors happen to think it's about us, Paul keeps our ego in check when he writes, "Let no one boast about human leaders." It's not about us. The foundation of this church is not about Forsberg or Garrison or Bevins or Lux or Florence. And the early church was not built on Paul or Apollos or Peter. It's the one who sends us here and the one who sends us on. And no, I'm not talking about the bishop. Paul writes, all of us are God's servants, working together with each other, with you, and with Sarah, and with Jed, and with Ed, as you continue to build up this church. And each builder must choose what to build upon, for no one can lay a foundation other than the one that has been laid. And Paul reminds us that the foundation is Jesus Christ. So when our visitors ask, "Take me to your leader," don't take them down the hall to the lovely pastor's office or to the back to stare at those images of the old guys and the one woman on that image. You see, your leader's not on that wall. Your leader is a Jewish mystic who studied and prayed and found union with the holy God that is within and beyond all. Your leader is a master of consciousness who offered a path through which all could find enlightenment as well. Your leader is a wisdom teacher intent on transforming people to awaken to our true nature, the light and the life of God in the world today. Envision with the union of God, with passion for justice and mercy and grace and forgiveness and care. Your leader taught the kingdom of heaven is within you. Your leader is not leaving you. The foundation of the church will hold strong. It's built on the foundation of eternity. That's the leader that you and I follow. That's the leader that Sarah Marsh will follow, and the one she will choose carefully to build upon. For we are all God's servants working together, now and always. It is so. Thank you.